Welcome to the Fascia-Informed Therapist, the essential podcast for occupational therapy professionals looking to deepen their understanding of fascia's pivotal role in therapy and health. I'm your host, Amy Mayer, an experienced occupational therapist, practice owner, and dedicated educator. Here we'll dive into the fascinating world of fascia, exploring its significance in the human body and its critical influence on occupational therapy practice. Each episode will bring you cutting-edge insights, expert interviews, and practical strategies to help you confidently integrate the science of fascia into your therapeutic approach. Whether you're a seasoned practitioner or just starting out, our goal is to equip you with high-quality, evidence-based, and fascia-informed continuing education opportunities that will enhance your skills and benefit your clients. So join us as we unravel the complexities of fascia and transform the way you practice occupational therapy. All health and wellness practitioners are welcome. Let's learn, grow, and evolve together. Hi, this is Amy, and this is another edition of the Fascia-Informed Therapist. And I have a really busy morning today because I'm packing to go to Philadelphia for the American Occupational Therapy Conference. And I've got clients and fly out in the morning tomorrow and lots of other things to do. But I really wanted to squeeze in a podcast because I had such an interesting session yesterday with a client that I wanted to talk about, and hopefully something in here helps you with a future client. And it just, I think, helps to illustrate how important it is to integrate both your OT skills or whatever discipline you are with your fascia skills. This client is known to me. I evaluated her a few years ago when she was still working. She's now retired, and she came because she just had a lot of tightness in her shoulders. Very high stress job, a lot of computer desk time, and anyway, helped her out a lot with that. And then she comes back occasionally, primarily sees Caitlin, but Caitlin on Monday, Caitlin was full, Maddie was full, and those two were flying out today. So I'm like, okay, I got a little time on Monday. I can squeeze her in. And so even though it's time reserved for book writing and other projects, but this is a wonderful, wonderful person. And I really wanted to help her out because she was in acute pain. So here's what happened. Her friend, who is a current client of mine, texted me over the weekend saying, I won't use her name, but she fell while golfing and thought she had torn something and wanted to know what she should do. And I'm like, well, thank you for being, making me your first stop, but I need more information, please. But I did educate her on, when to ice, when to use heat, and all that stuff. And I'll maybe talk a little bit more about that. But anyway, I saw her on Monday, and what happened was she was, as I said, now retired, likes to golf, was out golfing with her husband, and was up on a raised tee box, and had a tremendous drive, which she said doesn't happen all that often. So she was very much in celebratory mode. She had her hands up and she was looking at her husband going, "Did you see that?" And on her way to step off of the tee bar, down from the tee box, she caught her toe on the tee box marker and ended up going downhill, but her left leg stretched out in front of her, kind of hyperextending her knee a little bit and putting probably way more stress on her hamstring than it is used to having, and felt like she likely tore something in the hamstring. And husband came over, concerned, trying to help her up, and she's, "No, please just let me stay on the ground for a little bit because something happened here." So she did, and she rested a little bit, and then eventually was able to get back up, and fortunately they had a cart, and they were able to, get her back, and she said she really couldn't walk on it for the next day or so, and did end up going to her physician, and physician saying, you probably tore your hamstring, and I would go ice it for a few days. And she asked about imaging, and he said, well, yeah, we could definitely do that. And she asked a great question. Well, what would we do differently if we imaged it? And he said, probably nothing. The first course of action he wanted her to take was rest and ice. Okay, conservative approach, fine. He didn't even recommend that she see physical therapy or anything. And, the hamstring, man, you really rely on that muscle to get around in your daily life if you're a person who's up walking on your feet. So I don't know if I agree with not doing anything but rest and ice, and is even that the best course of action? And we'll talk about that as well. And these are my opinions, and I'm quite sure there's other people out there that might disagree with me, but, I love to listen to other people's opinions, and then I use my own critical thinking to decide what I would do, and that's also what I would invite you to do, because I'm sure many of you know things that I don't know. So she told him, well, I'm going to go see my myofascial therapist. That's what she refers to me. And I'm like, well, I'm an OT who does fascia work, and I don't always just do myofascial. I do a lot of other stuff too. But I did not correct her. So he said, oh, great. That's fantastic. I'm glad you're going to do that. I have no idea if he knew at all what she was talking about, but at least he supported going and doing something. So she gets to me, walks in the door, I greet her, and I'm like, all right, tell me the story. And she tells me the story of sliding down the tee box with her left leg extended out in front of her and having that sharp pain. She walked in the door with a lot of compensatory movement and a little bit of a limp, and she's like, yeah, it hurts every time I walk, every time I take a step, but it's not as bad as it was. I'm like, okay, well, that's a good thing. She said she had a lot of deep ache, a lot of achiness in there. I asked her to go ahead and sit down, and she was kind of pointing out the places on the hamstring that it really bothered her. Clearly, there was both an issue going on at the origin and the insertion, and then she said there was a couple spots in between. And as she was sitting down, she pointed out one kind of mid hamstring. I'm like, okay, let's just try one thing quick. I went and got one of the softer air-filled balls. I'm like, let's tuck this in there. Tell me, is this too much or is this feel therapeutic? And it was too much. So that told me, okay, she's really hypersensitive. There's a lot going on here. So fortunately, she wore shorts and had her laying face down on the table. Took her a second or two to get into that position. Having her hamstring or her knee fully extended, laying flat, was really uncomfortable for her. So we put a roll under her ankles, gave her a little bit of bend in her knee to shorten the hamstring a little bit, and that made her very comfortable laying face down on the table. So as I was kind of feeling the texture of the tissue through the calf all the way up to the hamstring and into the hips, there was a lot of texture changes in the calf and in the hamstring. And as I kind of go through with my hand first and my thumbs and press into different places to find out, okay, where are the real hot spots for her, because I don't want to put her in any pain. I want to know before I start really sort of digging in. And when I work on hamstrings, I mean, even when they're as acute as hers, I use my feet. Nobody says I can't in my business, so I do. And the reason that I do is because my hips and my legs are a lot stronger than my hands and my arms. And it's not about strength as it is about stamina. And a lot of times when I have my foot on somebody's calf or hamstring or hips, for instance, I am holding myself back so that I don't put too much pressure onto the person, because I don't want a lot of pressure. I want that just right depth of pressure for that individual person. But it's that holding that just right depth and that gentle shear that takes a lot of effort and stamina, and my hips can do it, my arms always can't. I go back and forth. Now, when I started on her calf, I started down at the heel area and moved towards it. When I got towards the center of the calf, she was like, whoa, that's a lot, even though I was really holding back. And so I actually switched to my hands, and then she said, well, that doesn't feel like enough. And I'm like, okay, I agree. It doesn't feel like the right depth, but I did not want her in pain. I did not want to stir up what was already there. So I went back to my feet and just took a little bit different angle and held back just a little bit more, and it worked perfectly. So I took a couple lines through the calf working toward the knee. That seemed to work really great for her. Then went up into the hamstring and worked up toward the hip where most of her pain was. And at no point did she say, that's too much. Then I went up into the hip, worked through the hip a little bit down toward the hamstring attachment, and trying to put some slack in that area so blood flow can get in there and we can get some healing going for her. Let that inflammation get out of there. So as I'm doing that, we're having a conversation about the fascia and what she's feeling and how all this is intersecting. And we get in, and I was telling her, here's my golden rule for somebody when they're asking me, well, what should I do? What can I do? And what shouldn't I do? Are you going to give me some stretches? Are you going to give me some exercise? And I said, well, I'm just really going to give you a rule to follow. You should move, but only in the range of motion that doesn't have sharp pain. And you will likely intuitively know when you're moving that you're getting close to that. And you should move slow for a little while until you learn what that range of motion is. As I will give you a few stretches because I want you to keep the hamstring and the fascial line between your foot and your low back. I want you to keep that elongated as much as you can. And yes, I want you to walk, I want you to move, but your rule of thumb is stay out of the range of pain. And when your healthcare provider is telling you to rest, what do people do? They sit. They either lay down or they sit. And most of the time they're going to sit. And they're putting the hamstring in a shortened position. If they're sitting at home, they're probably sitting in a soft chair or a couch, and then their pelvis is probably tucked under a little bit. They're not sitting up so that low back curve is in place. So they're putting the hamstring in a very shortened position. And when there's damage to that area, there was trauma to that area, the fascia is going to tighten up a little bit to try and protect that damaged area. So I think it's important to elongate and get into that range of motion that you can. Again, that is not going to elicit pain, because if you're eliciting pain, you're probably pulling into that tear, if there's one there, or where there's already a lot of inflammation, and you're just going to create more inflammation. So that was her rule of thumb to follow. And then she said, well, what about ice? She's like, I remember you telling me a long time ago that you should only use ice in the more acute phase. So even though the doctor told me to ice for a few days, she's like, I've been using warmth because I hear your voice in my I hear your voice in my head, which I love, by the way, because I love when people listen, they want to learn, they listen, and they do. And that's just, I love it. So she asked me, though, remind me why ice only in the beginning. And I said, well, you're your doctor is telling you what he was likely taught, is that you stay with ice, and especially if it's painful. And that's I told her that's kind of old news, though. Several years ago, the person that created the protocol actually redacted that, and now you only want to use ice in the first 6 to 8 hours of an acute injury, and then start to switch to warmth. Not heat, just warmth, because you want that inflammation to flow through there. It's part of the healing process, and ice is just press and pause. Just press and pause on that flow of the healing fluids. And I was telling her, well, then she's like, well, why ice in the beginning? And I said, well, here's my opinion on that. The ice in the beginning is good because all that inflammation and those fluids are going to flow there to start the healing process. But in our bodies, we already often have in our culture today, a lot of low-level inflammation already in there. And you don't want so much flowing in there that it's going to expand too quickly and damage tissues. So that's why ice in the beginning. And then we got down a conversation about, oh, that's interesting because my inflammatory markers are actually really high in my body. And I'm like, oh, what are you doing about that? Because that's going to slow down your healing process. And she said, oh, my doctor said that's pretty normal. And especially for a postmenopausal woman. I kind of wanted to know, give me his name. I'm going to make a call. I wouldn't have done that, but that sent us down a whole conversation on hormone replacement therapy. And there's research out there by Carla Stecco that when the estrogen levels go down, the fibrosis in the fascia goes up. So anyway, we went down that path as well. And she also, and I don't give medical advice. I share my own experience. I share what I'm learning. But I'm like, I think it would be a good idea for you to go have a conversation, find yourself a physician that has information about menopause, up to date information about menopause, and get your head wrapped around this inflammation issue in your body. And yes, something needs to be done about that, because I was explaining to her, yeah, your body's handling it. You are functional. But what's going on the inside in terms of a slow degradation of tissues, but also that's going to prevent you from healing as quickly as you could with this issue. It's going to make it last longer. It's going to make it harder to heal. So that's just another thing you can talk to clients about, is what's their baseline? Have they ever had their inflammatory markers tested? Anyway, yes. Okay, so what else did we talk about? After we were done, I had her sit up, and she said she was trying at home to stretch her leg out and put it up on a coffee table or an ottoman that was about the same height, and it was too much for her to do that. It was too painful. Well, we just got done working. I said, okay, I want you do you have a couch that you can sit on? Yes. I want you to sit sideways on the couch and just stretch your leg out on the couch. And how does that? So I had her do it on the treatment table, and that felt fine to her. I said, okay, next thing I want you to do is, I had her do some tucking of her pelvis and then sitting up real tall to untuck the pelvis. So anterior, posterior, anterior tilting. And then asked her if she could feel the pulling in the hamstring, gentle pulling in the hamstring as she did that. I said, okay, you're shortening the hamstring, you're lengthening the hamstring. Can you feel that? Yes. Can you feel if you go too far, does it get a little sharp? She said, yeah. Can you feel when you're about to get to that? Yes. So we practice going slow, and then just going through a pain-free range of motion. Then I gave her a yoga strap, and we wrapped it around her toes, and I had her do some gentle pulling of her toes back toward her, around the ball of the foot. And she's like, whoa, I can feel that all the way into my low back. I'm like, yeah, that's fascia. That's your fascial line pulling through. So we had her do a combination of gently pulling the foot back and then doing the anterior posterior pelvic tilt. And so that was going to be her stretching. And that felt good to her. It felt therapeutic. It felt like she was actively doing something to help herself. Then she got up and sat down in the chair so we could wrap up. And what else can I do? Can I do anything when I'm sitting like this? Absolutely. So I had her just stretch her toes back toward her, stretch her knees straight, stretch her toes back toward her, anterior posterior pelvic tilt, but we're sitting in a chair this time. And then that felt pretty good to her. So I said, let's try crossing right over left. So she's just sitting in that cross-legged position. And then do your anterior posterior pelvic tilt. So we're putting the hip and the leg in a slightly different position, doing kind of the same thing. Straighten the knee, tuck, untuck. And then we tried the owie leg. We tried the left over right, and she was able to do that and practice that movement. And then she's like, okay, this feels good. I can do this. Then she's like, what about walking? Because I feel like I could go for a walk now. And I'm like, okay. And she got up, she walked around a little bit. She's like, I feel really good. She wasn't compensating at all. I'm like, okay, well, let's set some limits. So, and that happens when people get up and they're feeling good, then they want to go do something. I said, I want you to really modulate your walk. So don't go on your regular walk. Only go for maybe a block or two and then back. Because what you don't want is to get half a mile out and you start hurting, but you still got a half a mile back, and then you're all jacked up again. So a short walk, come back, see how your body feels, especially after then sitting down for a little bit after your walk. You're going to tighten right back up again. What are you going to feel? If that went good, if it went well, then go a little bit longer next time. If that goes well, go a little bit longer next time. But don't overstress just because you feel really good. You still have stuff going on in there. We just took the slack off. There's fluid flowing in there now, but you are still healing. So we gave her that rule of thumb, and along with the rule of thumb, don't do anything that's going to cause a sharp pain. That will re-inflame, cause a problem. Then finally, she's like, okay, I feel great. I'm heading out. And I said, you're feeling great now. You're going to get in a car. How long is your drive home? 35 minutes. All right, so she's going to get into a car. She's going to probably has a bucket seats like most of them and don't have good lumbar supports for women. So she's going to probably move into a posterior pelvic tilt or a tucked position with a bent knee. And she's going to sit for 35 minutes with that hamstring in a shortened position. So you might get out of the car and go, whoa, what happened to feeling good? So you need to slowly get out of the car, slowly stretch that knee into an elongated position, do your tucks, untucks to ease that hamstring back into that lengthened position before you stand up and before you start to walk on it. And she totally got it. She totally got it after we practiced all that shortening, lengthening. Understood how being in that shortened position is going to make her feel like all that time we spent together was for nothing. So I haven't texted her today. It's still early to find out how she's doing, but she's an extremely intelligent woman, and I'm sure she'll retain absolutely everything that I told her. And mostly because I gave her rules of thumb. I didn't give her a handout with 17 exercises on it. I gave her rules of thumb to follow and explain why they were important. And we talked about maybe using the balls, but only if it feels therapeutic into those tight spots in the middle part of her hamstring. And to start with the softest ball before she works into the slightly more dense balls, because she's been to the workshop. She uses the balls pretty regularly, and just to take care of herself, and loves them. So anyway, I thought that was interesting, and I think some of the lessons here are the rules of thumb, not overloading people with so many exercises, because half the time they don't fully understand how to do them, or they don't do them correctly, and they think they have to do them to a point where there is some pain being elicited, because that no pain, no gain is still so firmly driven into people's brains. But I know the longer my clients stay with me, the more they start to really understand that it's not a thing. You have to abandon the no pain, no gain, or if it doesn't hurt, it doesn't work principles. But people also have to understand that when they walk out of the office and they're feeling great, you can't just go run a marathon or, go buy that mulch and throw it into your trunk. You have to recognize what's going on in your body. You have to understand inflammation and, move accordingly. So I hope some part of that was helpful to somebody out there. I do appreciate we hit 3,000 downloads this last week, and it's it's still hard for me to believe, but this month was incredibly busy. We did an 8-hour continuing ed for a group of therapists at a local hospital. We did the Nebraska OT Association and got some really wonderful feedback there. But probably the most fun thing, and I'm going to out myself. I do not like networking. I do not like sales. And we did the Omaha Holistic Health Expo for the first time. And standing there waiting for people to come up to my booth and talk to me is pure torture, actually. But I kept saying my little mantra, okay, universe, send me people that really need us and that are interesting to talk to so I could be entertained as well. And I also they have a handful of people that will get to speak for an hour at the expo, and we had a full room, and so that was really fun, and that drove a lot of people to the booth. But getting to educate the public about fascia and in a simplified manner, it was so fun, and people were shaking their heads in there and going, oh, this is so interesting. I didn't know this about my body, and why don't we know this? And anyway, it was a lot of fun, and I had a couple people stop at the booth that really could benefit from what we do. Some really interesting stories, and we'll see. Some of them have already showed up. Some of them got on Maddie's schedule, an inexpensive way to try out the whole fascia-informed approach. So anyway, it was actually really fun, and we'll probably do it again next year. So I would definitely recommend that if you are a practitioner and you're trying to get yourself out there. Expos like this that might be happening in your area, or wellness fairs or things like that, it was definitely worth the money for us to spend to be there for the weekend. It was a lot of time. It was pretty exhausting, but I would say we easily had 200 people or more stop by our booth. On Saturday, all three of us were there, Caitlin, Maddie, and myself, and on Sunday we ended up splitting the morning. I did the morning and they did the afternoon, and that worked well. But Saturday, all three of us needed to be there because there was tons of people. That's the day that I spoke as well. And I think they had a good time too. And I really surprised myself and had a good time too. So anyway, thank you so much for listening, and I hope everybody has a really great day. Thank you for tuning in to the Fascia-Informed Therapist. It's been a pleasure sharing insights and strategies to help you integrate fascia science into your practice. I'm Amy Mayer, and I hope today's episode has inspired you to explore further and take your therapeutic skills to the next level. Remember, we're committed to creating and providing top-notch, evidence-based, fascia-informed continuing education that empowers you as an occupational therapy practitioner. Stay connected with us for more enriching content, and don't forget to check out our online courses to deepen your expertise. Until next time, keep expanding your knowledge, refining your skills, and confidently applying the science of fascia to your practice. Here's to advancing together in health and wellness.